Holding Court with Mike Trevelyan and Dean Sheridan. Hi everybody who's tuned in and welcome to our first podcast of Holding Court. I'm here with my good friend Michael, who is a barrister. Michael, tell us about yourself, give us your qualifications and why people should listen to you.
Hello, yeah. Slightly more intense interview question than I was initially expecting. So my qualifications, fresh from my CV, are as follows. I have a 50-meter swimming certificate.
Okay.
I have some GCSEs and A-levels, none of which relate to law.
Mm-hmm.
I have a degree in law. And I'm a barrister. I'm also a solicitor, which I often forget. I'm higher rights qualified as a solicitor, and my work now is as a barrister in Cornwall Street Barristers in Birmingham. I have in my time done a little bit of crime and that kind of stuff. So I've got a fairly general knowledge, and I've been in practice since about 2013, I think.
Okay, and I'm Dean Sheridan. One of my most notable qualifications is I once watched Wayne's World on VHS twice in a row, which is, if anyone...
out of interest, why was that?
I don't know. It's not even that good a film. I don't know. It was on...
That's what I was thinking.
It was in the video player, and maybe I just didn't want to move. And which is, when you think about the strain it was to wait for a VHS. What, to rewind a VHS?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Was this in the day when you'd have to rewind the thing? So you'd have to sort of sit there waiting for the VHS to rewind.
Not like manually. I didn't have to get my finger and spoil it back up.
No. How would you review Wayne's World? What would you say?
I would call it an enjoyable yarn for those with no expectations.
Which may very well be a good slogan for this podcast.
Yeah, an enjoyable yarn for those. And I do have a swimming certificate. I got up to gold in swimming, and I couldn't get, I think it was like platinum or something like that, because you had to wear pajamas, and I was too fat to pull myself out the pool. I sort of rolled onto the side like a beach whale. So, so they wouldn't let me take it, which was kind of shattering for a small child. Anyway, we'll move on to...
I can tell you're over it now.
Yeah. I didn't just have a flashback. Right. Okay. So this whole podcast is we're going to get some crazy court cases that I've just looked up randomly on the internet, and hopefully my research will get better as the podcasts go on. And me and Mike are just going to speak about them. He'll hopefully be able to give us some insight into the world of law. I'm just a layman, so I'm doing it more for my interest, and maybe those who listen in are interested also. So I don't know, we should just dive in with maybe the first one that I found. Are you up for that, Mike?
Well, before we do, I want to go back to this gold swimming certificate business.
Okay.
Diving in.
I had the gold. It was the platinum.
So what did you have to... Because when I used it, you would have to jump into a pool and get a brick from the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Was that what you had to do for gold?
Yeah, and you had to wear clothes and
because I always
swim
thought
at 200 meters.
The highest, if you like, the pinnacle of childhood swimming achievements. So I'm really interested to know what the platinum level required you to do. Did you have to sort of break out of a car that was on the bottom of the pool and then pick up a brick?
No, you had to reenact D-Day. Basically, you were under the water whilst being shot at. No, I was ages ago. I think it's just the amount of meters. It's a bit like repeating your meters. You go 50 meters, 100, 200, and then 1,000 or whatever it was before you went on to them. And I think it was the amount that you swim. But then at the end, when you got yourself out the pool, you weren't allowed to go up the steps. And that was my point of failure.
Your downfall actually came outside of the water.
Yeah, well, if you've seen, I think it's Skyfall, where James Bond lifts himself up gracefully out of a pool when he's training with his abs and everything. I was like the antithesis of that. I was like literally a boy in pajamas of probably some geeky persuasion, very wet, very round, and sort of just like panting and rolling onto the side of a pool.
Excellent. I've got quite the vision in my mind, and I would have given you an award for that. I don't know what it would have been, but it seems rather harsh that you didn't get anything for all of that effort.
Yes, probably the Prince of Wales award.
Yes. You can now add that to your CV, I think.
Okay, right. So yes, so I got the Prince of Wales award, and that's also added to my CV of reasons why I'm qualified to speak on these matters. That and Wayne's World. Okay, as we okay, so let's have a look at our first case. So this one I found very interesting, and most people would, is that a French worker was awarded 40,000 euros because his job was too boring. Which obviously grabs you from the get-go, because I think there's many people. I mean, I don't understand. Like, so he was awarded 40,000 euros because they found that his job caused bore out, right? Which is obviously a similar thing to burnout, right? And I believe he started as a manager with the company, and it's the case is called it was against In Parfum, and it's French, and obviously my French dialect isn't very good.
Mean in perfume?
In perfume, yes, in parfume. Well, I'm trying to say it how the French would, and I've never been to France and didn't do well in French.
Un parfum.
In parfum, yeah. Don't try and get me to do it. Right, and Frederick Desnard was his name,
which is possibly the most French name I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, Desnard. I think, I don't know what that was. I'm not going to try. I don't know whether I'll borderline in on offence if I keep trying to do these accents as we go through any of these cases. So Frederick Desnard. No, I'll leave that. Yeah, he was awarded 40,000 euro, or by another article, £36,000, because his job was too boring. He joined as a manager, and I believe he lost a client, a relatively big client, and then was given another job within the company, in which it was tedious and boring, and he left due to depression, headaches, and insomnia, and then sued the company for his job being too boring, and won on the case of bore out. And I found a definition for bore out. Boredom bore out syndrome is a psychological disorder that causes physical illness, epilepsy, mainly caused by mental underload at the workplace due to lack of either adequate quantitative or qualitative workload. One reason for bore out could be that the initial job description does not match the actual work. Now, I've seen some job descriptions before, and and they're often absolutely full of rubbish, and you probably don't know what the job is until you start the job anyway, as I'm pretty sure every job tries to make their job sound more interesting than they actually are. Like a customer service specialist, you're stuck in vegetables in Tesco.
Yeah, this is something I found really weird in recent years, is the trend towards sexing up job titles so that they just sound so much more interesting than they really are. And in principle, that's fine. But sometimes you lose the plot of what the actual job is supposed to be. So I think dinner ladies are now sort of food student customer operatives or some strange thing.
Which sounds like they're undercover.
Exactly. And I did once see something described as post-corporeal asset relocation, which turned out to be grave robbing. So I think it's this sort of weird trend to give everyone a fancy sounding job.
There was an advertisement for a job as a grave robber.
Yeah, I don't know where I saw that. But it may well not have been a legitimate job. But I'm fairly sure I saw it advertised somewhere. But then I'm not sure who would be advertising for a grave robber. That's the only point where I'm falling down a little bit there.
I guess
Not saying the
who
employer-
survived last out of Burke and Hare, probably looking for a new a new friend to join in.
Yes. I suppose that could have been my job if I'd have read that advert and taken an interest in it. But
I think you could have added
did
it
I
to your
tell
list
you
of
that
qualifications.
Did I ever tell you that I accidentally interviewed for a job without realizing that I was doing that?
No, go on.
So when I was sort of temporarily unemployed after finishing the bar exams, I was looking for a job, and I got in touch via the internet. You may have heard of it, with a sort of what are they called? One of these recruitment consultants.
Yeah, I've had dealings with recruitment consultants in the past.
Well, yes, this was my only dealing with a recruitment consultant, and they said, "Oh yeah, come down to see us, and we'll have a chat." And so I travelled down for this sort of interview, and met the chap, and we were chatting away, and he was, asking me fairly standard interview questions about my CV, and then it became apparent that he wasn't sizing me up for a job in law. He was interviewing me for a job as a recruitment consultant. And the interview did not go terribly well. And this was, I think, 2012. No, 2009. And I'm still waiting to hear back. But, fingers crossed. You never know.
Yep. Well, you can just stick with the job you got for now, as a sort of placeholder. And if you get this recruitment consultant job that you're after, then dreams will be fulfilled.
Exactly. I'll have to rethink my career ambitions. But for now, I think I'll just stick with being a lawyer.
Yes, I believe so. Maybe not quite as lucrative, but
well, that was one of the weird things. The chap in this interview was banging on about how much money he made. And before I realized that he was recruiting me for the same job, I didn't quite understand why he was doing that. But then, of course, he was actually advertising the job of a recruitment consultant to me. It was all very peculiar, but had a nice day out anyway.
Oh, that sounds like a fun experience. And so back to the case. Yeah. We'll go back to the case. So he got bore-out syndrome and he got paid out. But I'm guessing there's plenty of people get depressed with their jobs and don't like some of the work. I mean, some work can be tedious, but someone's got to do it. So where does the line get drawn with claiming for bore-out?
Well, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds as though he developed, as a consequence of the work, a actual series of psychological and physical illnesses, which it seems are then sort of lumped together under the umbrella term bore-out. But it does sound, from what you told me, that he did actually have physical and mental adverse responses to the work that he was doing. So I suppose if he's able to prove, and I think this would probably be a difficult thing in this country, if he's able to prove that the work has caused him to suffer physically and mentally, then I can at least understand why there might be the beginnings of a legal case on the basis of a personal injury being caused. But I do know, in the context of employment law, you can, for example, sue in this country for things like hurt feelings and things like that, which is not a cause of action that's available in other areas of our legal system. But directly suing because the job is boring, I think probably wouldn't be a runner. But I think if you can show that your employer has caused you physical and mental harm as a consequence of the work, then I can see there might be some merit in that. I think the difficulty would be proving it, wouldn't it?
Yes, I mean, it doesn't. All he says is that the job that he got after he was originally meant to be a manager, but got demoted to this, like say, for losing a client. I would assume that he would have had to, and it doesn't specify anything, which is slightly annoying. I tried to find the brief, but couldn't. Is that there must be some examples within there of the employers being specifically unfair to them to cause them that. Like if he has the same job of, say it's a role within a business, usually have a team of about I don't know, maybe a certain amount of people. So there must be an amount of people that are doing exactly the same job as him. So the minute they see him get 36,000, it's like, oh, you know what? I've always wanted 36 grand as well. And then you just go for it. So there would have to have been specific cases of them being like really bad to him. You know, like a manager walks out wafting a paper from the toilet and points at him and gives him a plunger and tells him to go in.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that kind of thing as a sustained course of action, perhaps amounting to something like constructive dismissal, if he's effectively being bullied into doing all the rubbish jobs. But I think presumably what he would have been able to do would be to get some kind of doctor to identify both that he's suffering from these problems and also to identify where they've come from, because that as I say, would be the bigger problem, I think, would be trying to prove how it's been caused. And that, of course, would solve the problem of everyone on the team being able to issue claims for the same problem, because, of course, they'd equally be required to prove that they've actually got a medical problem and where it's come from in terms of it being the fault of the employer. So I suppose that would stop everyone being able to do the same thing. But it is slightly strange. I don't know of any similar case here in the UK, but employment isn't my speciality, but it does seem like the kind of thing I might have heard of. It had been certainly a common thing here in the UK.
Would I've assumed in the UK, if one person sets up that sort of precedent, everyone's going to be looking for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it kind of depends, doesn't it? One of the skills of being a lawyer is trying to distinguish between different types of cases. So showing that your case either is the same as one that's gone before, or depending on what side you're on, that it's completely different to one that's gone before. And of course, in this country, I don't know about France, but in this country, claims against employers tend to be dealt with in an employment tribunal, which is a slightly flatter structure in terms of setting precedents than the court system that we have here, where you have county court, high court, court of appeal, Supreme Court. The tribunal structure tends to be slightly flatter with a first tier, an upper tribunal, and then maybe court of appeal and Supreme Court up from there. So this wouldn't necessarily follow that it would set a precedent, but it would certainly open, I think, a lot of people's eyes to the possibility of whether or not they could make a claim and get a nice payday from an employer who was perhaps boring them. I think also it would depend on this chap, as you're telling me, he was demoted, so he ended up doing a different job to the one he was employed originally to do.
Yeah, for making a mistake.
And I suppose that would also make it different from somebody who gets employed in a job and they just happen to find the job boring. I suppose that you might be able to make an argument that if they've signed up to a job that's been accurately described, but they happen to find it boring, then perhaps there's not a claim there. But if you've had a change of job, then it might be a slightly different situation. The other thing, I suppose, it seems to me, is that there is a principle in our country that you have to take your victim as you find them. So if somebody is more prone to psychological harm or physical harm, then to a large degree you just have to accept that that's the person they are. Whereas it might be that in France or other countries, there's slightly more of an objective standard as to what you might expect from an employee. But it seems to me as though this chap has had a bit of a strange ride of it.
Well, it was in 2010, so maybe that was around about the time they started making job advertisements so weird that you couldn't even fully understand what the job is. So that when they turn around in court and say, it's just not the job that was advertised, they say no one has any idea what the job that was advertised is. I mean, you've got the title, but...
Yeah, it's one of those strange laws of unintended consequences, isn't it? Where somebody ends up suing somebody on the basis that the job wasn't as advertised. And the solution, instead of making your jobs like they're advertised, is to make the advert so incomprehensible that nobody can possibly say whether it matches what it was advertised or not.
I mean, I can't count the amount of times if I've thought about moving for a job or looked on things and seen what's advertised in the field, that I have to think to myself, I don't know if I could do this job because I don't know. It looks like it should be something I can do, but the things they're saying, just like, it just makes no sense. I'm like, I don't know if I should apply for this because I have no idea what it is.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
I would say probably one of my probably my first one. It's got to be just a pot wash. It wasn't the greatest kitchen, and you just literally just sweating all day. And so when I was 16, it was the first time I got to make any decent money, but like it was just like a strain. You basically, it's not pot wash. It wasn't. They call it kitchen porter. Again, this is upgrading. And the reason they probably changed it to kitchen porter is because what it literally means in the fine print is kitchen bitch, which means that anything if you're even got a moment to breathe, you've got to do something else. Peel some vegetables. Take this job. It was up in Ryton, which is in Coventry, and it was like the organic garden. It's a really nice place, but for some reason their bin was like over the car park, half a mile away from where the kitchen is at the back of the complex. And I have no reason why. But yeah, you had to take that. It was great. I was physically fit, though. That was a brilliant time, actually. I had made up for my lack of swimming merit by carrying heavy bins and washing. But yeah, that was the worst. That was definitely the worst. I haven't moved really between many jobs. When I worked for a certain bank, which obviously I won't mention, it was that was a bit shit as well. But that's just because that's just office politics for you. There's a lot of power hungry people out there that get to a certain level that never raise above that level, but they like to impose what little power they have on other people. A bit like, Ralph Fiennes' character in Schindler's List.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something that I found in my job recently through, I don't know if you're aware, but we're currently in the grip of a international plague.
What?
I know.
Sorry.
And so the courts up and down the land have been trying to impose various types of safety protocols to enable people to come to court safely and not die of the plague. And it doesn't seem, from what I can tell, to amount to very much, apart from putting lots and lots of yellow and black hazard tape everywhere. In, it seems, an effort to sort of scare off the plague. But what I have also noticed is that everybody at court who works there now, particularly in certain courts, have just gone mad with power. Absolutely mad. So if you step 1 centimeter out of line entirely innocently, they will come down on you like a ton of bricks. And it does seem as though for some people, the advent of this plague has given them the chance to unleash their inner power-hungry demon, and they are just absolutely loving their working environments at the moment because they get to sort of boss people around.
Get back on all the barristers and lawyers that snubbed them as they walk past. It's like you'd stop for a test, but they pushed a swab just that extra centimeter up into your brain just for discomfort.
Exactly. And then you sort of think, I'm not sure blood should actually be coming out of my nose, but these guys are probably professionals, so that's fine.
I work in IT during the pandemic, so that's a pretty powerful place to be when everyone's working from home.
Yeah, you kind of lucked out there, actually. I suppose IT is probably one of the best ones to work from home on.
Well, yeah, it's the easiest one as well. Okay, so let's have a look at our next case. So this is a little bit more in depth. I will share my screen with you. We're doing this over Zoom, by the way, just in case people are worried about social distancing. This case is... Can you see that?
Yes.
This is a case called Leonard versus PepsiCo. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, so basically there was an advertisement in the 90s, in 1996, where Pepsi were letting people collect points with Pepsi cans in order to then swap them in later for prizes. Things like, I'm guessing, as it was probably mainly put towards kids, you probably get like a skateboard or something for like 300 cans of Pepsi or something stupid like that. And on the advert, they decided for fun, it showed a young teenage boy arrive at work in a Harrier jet. And in the subtitles, it reveals that this Harrier jet was 7 million points. It was obviously a joke, but Leonard decided to get enough points and try to get himself a Harrier jet, to which they refused, and this is the case. So Leonard versus PepsiCo Inc. So I'll show you the advertisement and we'll discuss as we watch it and you'll get the idea. So basically, it's the coolest kid of the 90s has just rocked up with his glasses and the class is going crazy. And he lands a Harrier jet outside the school. And he says, that beats taking the bus. And says, Harrier fighter, 7 million points.
Right.
Drink Pepsi, get stuff. So it says at the start of just to give sort of relevance to it, at the start of the video, he sort of shows you leather jackets and things like that and says, T-shirt, 75 Pepsi points. Very cool Pepsi T-shirt. And a leather jacket is something like a few thousand, 175 for some shades. So, yeah. So he realized that you couldn't possibly get enough Pepsi points from buying Pepsi. And he decided to just buy the points individually.
So did he end up getting the 7 million points and tried to trade it in?
So he got the 7 million points. Sorry, so he sets out to redeem the 7 million Pepsi points. He believes he will receive a Harrier jet. So he realizes that the Harrier jet's not in this magazine. Supposedly there was a little magazine with all the points and the prizes, but he continued anyway. It's physically impossible to drink enough Pepsi to get a Harrier jet. So once he had done 15 Pepsi points, but he could buy additional points could be purchased for 10 cents. Right? So he raised, I mean, imagine like you raise this amount of money, but then you wasted it on Pepsi points. He raised $700,000 to buy Pepsi points. Right, and he wrote a check. Oh, he added $8.50 to it as well of his own money. Added in his 15 original Pepsi points and filled out the order form by writing 1 Harrier jet.
So
they didn't accept it. He didn't receive a Harrier jet, and wrote him a letter telling him that the reason why. He took them to court for breach of contract without a legitimate legal excuse. They refused it. And the reason I didn't give it to him was a Harrier jet was only used as entertainment in the commercial. A Harrier jet is worth over 28 million. And the jet was not in the Pepsi points catalogue. So, yeah, the court ruled in favour of PepsiCo. Leonard then appealed the ruling, and the US Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit confirmed the ruling. And supposedly an advertisement does not constitute an offer. In actuality, PepsiCo's commercial was not an advertisement to receive offers. And then he lost it. So I personally think that that's terrible and that he should have got his Harrier jet. What are your thoughts?
Well, my immediate reaction is that absolutely he should have got his Harrier jet. And this is possibly one of the largest miscarriages of justice I've ever heard of. It's interesting, actually. It does raise some interesting questions because it deals with what makes a contract and what the constituent requirements of a contract are. And in order for there to be a contract, amongst other things, you need to have an offer and you need to have an acceptance of the offer that somebody has made. And there also has to be what lawyers call an intention to create legal relations, which is an intention that your contract is to be enforceable by law, rather than a contract between friends and family that's perhaps not intended to have legal consequences in the event of breach. And listening to your summary of this case, Leonard and PepsiCo, immediately it took my mind straight back to one of the first cases that I did as a law student, one of the first cases we were directed to in our contract law lectures, which is Carlyle and the Carbolic Smoke Ball Company, which is a case from, I think, 1893. And in that case, the Carbolic Smoke Ball Company had produced an advert where they said that anyone who uses our smoke ball, and that was a sort of medicinal product of its time.
It was
anyone
like I read a bit earlier, something like some sort of acidic thing that was meant to sort of like stuck a tube or something up your nose and like breathed it in, and it was meant to sort of clear or like slightly burn away stuff so that you couldn't possibly get the flu.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the old version of President Trump's, why don't you inject yourself with bleach? School of medical care, which is why don't you stick a pipe up your nose and it will just smoke out the flu.
So are you sick of just breathing in your car fumes to get rid of the flu? Well, now we've put it in a ball that you can keep in your house.
Exactly. Why not have all the joy of pollution 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Why should people that live in pollution ravaged cities get all the fun? So the Carbolic Smoke Ball Company put out this advert, and they basically said anyone who uses the smoke ball and then contracts the flu, we will pay you, I think, £100, which obviously in 1893 was quite a substantial amount of money.
It was something like £7,500. It would be relevant to today's money. Is
that right?
Yeah, I was looking it up earlier. It's somewhere on here when I was looking up some cases. Oh no, more. So it's actually is the equivalent of around 11,500. I don't. Well, that sounds a little bit OTT, doesn't it? And it's worth bearing in mind that 1981 was the equivalent to 11,500. Jesus.
I mean, you're still away off your Harrier jump jet, aren't you?
But, I know, yeah, but like now, Brewster's Millions, and that has a different spin for me on the amount of money that he was getting.
Yeah, if they do a sequel, it's going to have to be kind of Brewster's Billions and
Trillions.
Brewster's Trillions. I'll tell you what, that was a great film, wasn't it? Brewster's Million.
Yeah, I love it. They've redone it so many times, like in different ways. Though they did Mr. Deeds. Do you remember that? Adam Sandler.
No, I've never seen a lot of Adam Sandler stuff. Actually, I've only seen The Water Boy and The Wedding Singer. So The Wedding Singer, that's a great film.
Yeah, it was sort of towards the end of him being any good. When he just sort of started making movies by numbers for Netflix, so it all sort of like went to fail from there. But yeah, these days it was just like Bezos's Trillions would be the new one.
But nowadays, of course, it would be really boring because all you would have to do is it would just be a 2-hour film of somebody sitting at their computer, just buying stuff online.
Just buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin, yeah. That's all they have to do.
Buy a load of Bitcoin. And then you'll soon have that $1 trillion spent. Don't worry about that. So yeah, going back to 1893 and the smoke ball. So the lady Carlyle, she used the smoke ball in accordance with the advert, got the flu, and then tried to claim the £100 reward. And the court agreed with her and said that she could have the £100, so that because they were in breach of contract, the Carbolic Smoke Ball Company had made an offer to her by way of this advert, and she had accepted it by undertaking the course of treatment in accordance with the advert, and she was therefore entitled to the money. And what that case is important for, in the context of our Harrier jump jet friend, is this idea of making a contract with everyone and anyone, a contract with all the world. Because it used to be the case, or used to be thought to be the case, that you could only make a contract with identified people. And so the idea, like in this Pepsi case, of sending out an advert and anyone who wanted to could effectively accept the offer that the advert made, wasn't always the way. And so Carlyle was quite important for that, because it shows that you can have a contract with anyone, even if you don't know their identity. I suppose the question in the PepsiCo case, there are, I suppose, two different things from Carlyle. One is that there was this Pepsi. Did you say the Pepsi catalog? Is that what it was?
It's a Pepsi catalog which had all the point relevance in it, separate from the advert. So I'm guessing if you bought some cans of Pepsi, or you would get a little catalog in it that would have all of the sort of prices and how much you would need to raise for each one.
Yeah, and I suppose if the jump jet wasn't in there, then I suppose it's slightly different from Carlyle. Going back to what I was saying earlier about trying to show some cases are the same as others and some cases are different from others. Presumably there would have been some terms and conditions that you can only get things from the catalogue, which obviously makes it different to the Carlyle case where the only contractual document was the advert itself by way of a poster, I think. And the other thing, I suppose, is whether it was what's known as mere puff in English contract law, which is something which isn't an offer, but it's merely something which is a sort of puffed up bit of advertising, which people would not take as being a genuine offer.
Yeah, so that's how they sort of rule in the end, is that a reasonable person would not have thought that it constituted as an offer, and that the jet was merely for zany humour. And that leads me to just a nice little quote from it. So it says, the court observations that they make for great reading, comments such as, the callow youth featured in the commercial is a highly improbable pilot, one who could barely be trusted with the keys to his parents' car, much less the prize aircraft of the United States Marine Corps. And things like
that strikes me more as a problem for Pepsi than for whoever would want to go and get the 7 million points. But yeah, I suppose that's fair. It does make it slightly more in the realm of advertising puff rather than a genuine offer.
I mean, technically, maybe they're sort of saving him there. I mean, if you think about the logistics of storing and maintaining a Harrier jet, most people don't have that kind of room in their homes to do it.
That's true.
Secondly, every time that thing went off, surely it would be some sort of security breach to the national to the USA, that there's this Harrier jet just flying around with he'll probably get shot out the sky on his way to school.
Yeah, I mean, it may well have been a bit of a blessing in disguise that he wasn't allowed to tool around in his Harrier jump jet. But I do feel a bit sorry for him, actually, because it seems to me that there's some merit in saying that he should have been allowed what Pepsi were offering. But out of interest, of course, that's why I've always wondered about this before I did my degree, about why companies like who advertise, men's body spray can advertise it in such a way that it seems to be the best thing since sliced bread, rather than just pressurized smelly spray. And they make all sorts of claims about what it can do for you.
We might need to do like an advertising special, because I don't know whether it's lies or stuff, but you always hear that they had to change the adverts for Red Bull because it said Red Bull that gave you wings, and people just were not getting the wings that they were promised when they drank a can of Red Bull. And things like, when you spray Lynx these days, the old Lynx adverts used to be like you sprayed Lynx and like 700 models ran through your house just to cuddle you for wearing Lynx Africa, which I can state categorically has never happened. Well, to me, but maybe...
Yeah, you speak for yourself. But yeah, Lynx was exactly the company I had in mind. And that's how they can kind of get away with that over-the-top advertising, because reasonable people would look at it and say that's probably not what's going to happen to me. But of course, if one takes a very strict interpretation of what is being offered, then I suppose you could say, being slightly unreasonable, that seems to be part of the product that Lynx and others are selling. So the law does give advertisers a little bit of flexibility in that respect, and people who enter into contracts a little bit of room to sell their product. But It's an interesting one, and yeah, we should absolutely do an episode on advertising. Particularly, I think gaming companies and the way in which they advertise a lot of their products, particularly in the 90s, which was just filled with ludicrous marketing.
Well, like Sega.
Yes, well, exactly. But I mean, there's been all sorts of strange ways of trying to market games by, telling parents that if they name their child after the protagonist in a game, they can get a copy of the game for free, and that kind of stuff. So there may be an episode for us to do in the future.
Oh, there's loads to do on gaming advertising. I mean, most games these days are only advertised by things that are not representative of in-game content. And they definitely don't know. A lot of companies, things like EA and things like that, don't let you know that, by the way, you just bought this game for £45, but you can also feel free to spend another £700 on on like different coloured shoes.
Yes, the whole kind of microtransaction thing is a bit of a blight on the industry.
Oh, I hate it. Okay, so we'll move on to our last little case then. So he did not get his jet. I don't think he got anything for his time. It would have been nice if maybe they just, for a laugh, due to the sheer amount of points that he had as well, had maybe sent him out to be a passenger in a Harrier jet. Would have been a nice thing for Pepsi. Oh, and there was another thing with it. Lefkowitz is something else that they also spoke about, and he was a guy who saw an advertisement in a paper for fur coats at $1 each. They had 3 fur coats that were going, and they were $1 each if you got to the store by, I think it was in the 50s, and if you got to the store by 9 a.m. So he turned up at the store and he said they were originally around $130, and he turned up to the store at 9 a.m. He said, I want one of these fur coats. And they said, no, you can't, because the advertisement's for women. So then the next week they did it again, and they said it was the most random named thing, and I completely forgot what it's called, like a vole or mole shoal. I feel like I'm making up a poem. It's like probably the most 50
vole shoals.
Yeah, it's like a 50s piece. It's very. It's like something you'd get on Fallout and wander around in.
Was it mink? They used to use mink, didn't they?
No, it wasn't mink. It was an odd one. Okay. Let's see if find it. It's
I think that's the real question here, isn't it? Is what was the shawl made of?
So fur coats, and then the next one was rabbit fur stole. I don't know where I got a vole or a mole. It's the stole. It's the stole that got me. I was like, stole, mole, vole.
Mole?
A mole and vole stole. Yeah. So eventually they went back and they said, this is for women again. So he's there at 9 a.m. for one of his $1 rabbit fur stoles. And so then he took them to court. And he, just for the amount of money, minus his two $1, the amount of money that accumulated those 2 items, their full original price. And they didn't let him have the first one because the first one was like a roundabout number, so he couldn't confirm that was the price of the original item. But they rewarded him something like $139 for the rabbit fur stole. Because, and minus obviously his $1 that he would have originally spent on it because of it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think actually I have, again, back in the dim and distant past, come across this case, or a case very much like it, of these sorts of offers, and they turn out to really not be products that are available, but it's just a way of getting people through the door. What I think particularly interesting about it nowadays is, of course, unlike back in the 50s or the 40s or whenever, when this case happened, nowadays, of course, you'd have to be very careful about saying that something that would otherwise be available to a customer is not available to them because of their gender. And
like Yorkie, not exactly suitable for girls.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting, actually, on the Yorkie example, because that's not actually that old, is it? That was probably, 15 years ago?
Probably even less than that. I'd say it was early like 10s, like 2010, 2011. because I just assumed that they just thought Yorkie looked like a brick, and only a man would work with a brick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can certainly I can see that. I did actually this was actually only about 2 years ago. I was walking up to my local shop and going through the car park, and they had one of these sort of things, a sort of stack of products in a big cardboard container thing. And on the side of the container was written, 2 men only can lift this. And that struck me as slightly sexist. You know, can't women lift things? Do you have to go and get your husband to lift a heavy cardboard box?
Well, was there stuff in the cardboard box? Just like the world's heaviest cardboard box. It's just got like a lead inlay between the cardboard and the inside. Yeah, that stuff happens all the time. When I first started my next job after working in a shop, so we're going through my job history today. It was in like a storage area, and every single bit of like literature on how to lift a box and that was always some burly man in dungarees. And sadly, I was never supplied dungarees while I worked there. So,
oh, that is a shame. That is a shame. Did they expect you to supply your own dungarees?
Well, I don't know, but I wasn't paying out for dungarees.
No,
I was like, you know, I saw it obviously again, misrepresentation of the role, as we were speaking about earlier. I assumed that dungarees came with it. It was part of the rewards package. You got a monthly, some money paid in monthly by the business to your pension, and you got some dungarees that you could also have until your dying day. I wanted to be buried in them.
And a nice rabbit fur stole, and you can go to that.
And I don't even know what a rabbit fur stole is. Can you please tell me, Mike? Because you seem to know.
Well, I don't know, but I'm guessing it's one of those sort of the sort of things that go over somebody's shoulders, like a shawl, but kind of posh. Or is it one of those things that women used to have, and they'd like put their hands in, and they'd have them at the front, like they put their hands out in front of them, and they'd have it as like a warming hand thing.
I'm going to have to quickly look this up.
Although I've got a feeling those things were called muff warmers, but I don't know if I've just made that up.
That's my childish nature coming through. Let's have a look. Here we go. Let's have a look. A stole. See, I've got to put stole in. I'm going to get a definition for stealing up. Number one search for stole on Google. Stolen, a 2012 film, and just underneath, stolen goat.
That's weird, isn't it? Who's stealing so many goats?
I don't know. Well, depends, actually. It could be a place that, you know, where goats are quite sacred. 1950s, 1960s mink fur stole. It is like a fancy sort of scarf thing, but it looks much bigger. Like it. Oh, there's a Roman stole. Basically, you know what the priests have that come down. It's just basically a dodgy scarf, but you get the two sides of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by the first ad, which is for a Harvey Nichols stole, costing just under £4,000. And it looks to me like a scarf, to be honest. And the 1950s, 60s mink fur stole is on Etsy for £90. And it seems to me that the mink fur stole from the 50s should be worth more than the Harvey Nichols scarf. But that's a strange world that we live in, isn't it?
Yeah, I was trying to work out if it was like one of those things where they've made it look like it, like instead of an actual mink fur stole. It's on Etsy, and Etsy are usually well overpriced. They're like a piece of wood with your name etched into it. £77.
I must admit, I do enjoy a bit of time with a cup of tea browsing Etsy.
I do, and I do wish I understand, you know, funding the people and helping them, because obviously it's individual businesses, it's handcrafted stuff. You do get some cool stuff on it. But I do like looking. But what the Catholic Church clergy purple stole? I mean, why is that like?
See, isn't that a classic example, like we were saying about your dungarees, of the kind of workwear that really should be supplied by your employer?
Well, yeah. If I was a priest and they're like, "We've got a dog collar," I'm like, "No, you have to go down M&S and get one." And all I'm going to do is buy one of those shirts that has like one of those little plastic things that holds, and then just turn it round in the collar
Yes.
and hold it, so you don't have to spend out that much. But yeah, like this kind of thing, you would assume that either you were supplied for it for your job, or it would be slightly blasphemy to be wandering around wearing that. I mean, what if I just was like, I'm going to bring it into fashion, and then I just turn up at work one day, my stole, my Catholic church stole around my neck, just like, oh, it's cold out there, take it off.
Put on the stole. So you're bringing back liturgical stoles into fashion.
Yes,
that's your contribution to the world of fashion.
Yes, and those old hair vests that used to nick at your skin for ages. What were they called?
Hair vests? What's that?
Oh yeah, that was really. Oh, I got myself in a YouTube hole once, and it's just like when you're like proper Puritan thing.
Oh, is it one of these sort of religious? What's the word I'm looking for? When you're trying to atone for sins.
Is it Thomas More? I think he had one. A cilice, that's it. Yeah, it was originally a undergarment made of coarse cloth or animal hair, and you endured it, and it was like a flagellation. That's it. Yeah, and it was like. Yeah, it was really uncomfortable. It was just so that you knew that every time you're enjoying yourself, that you will one day die.
Well, it's important to always have that thought in your mind, isn't it?
Yes, especially you're in the middle of joy. Oh yeah, like this is great, having a drink, have a laugh with your friends, but then you got to stop just for 5 minutes in silence and have a 1,000-mile stare into existential crisis.
Exactly. Although I do wonder how many puritanical monks would often be having a drink with their friends. But then you do get that
Abbot ale.
That ale, yeah, exactly. I was just going to say Abbot ale.
A blue nun.
So perhaps they do. Yes, perhaps they get on it a lot more than I realised.
Oh, they drink in church, Mike. I grew up Catholic. They drink in church. That was one of the best things. It's like, halfway through you get a free wine. That's probably why most people turned up. It's like a timeshare presentation. You get a free meal if you come and watch this presentation.
Which I suppose, if you think about it, the doctrine of transubstantiation kind of is a timeshare presentation.
Yeah, just one that's been going on for a long, long time and no one's bought it yet.
Sort of a cosmic timeshare in the Maldives.
Yeah. You can get it, but just when you die. But okay.
This is where you have me at a disadvantage, because I'm not a religious person, so I don't know enough about the doctrines of Catholicism to know how much of a good time it is when you're drinking the wine and being sold a timeshare.
Well, I would say, if I was to put it, and I'm sure we might have a few Catholic people listening, but I would say the Catholic doctrine from an Irish background is life is misery, but you can get drunk.
Excellent. Well, that's kind of in a way really preparing everyone for the current state of the world, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. See, I've been prepared for this for ages. That's why I still smile.
Exactly. So I suppose in a sense it has worked.
In that next stage is obviously the locusts, and then we've got the rivers turning to blood. So this is our last bit, and I call this one bullshit, because I'm 90%, I'm more than 90% sure it's bullshit, right? And it's something, it's one of those things that gets posted around, and I'm going to keep my eye out for these, and if anyone who's listening sees these kind of things around, then we'll have an email at the end that you can sort of post in and let us know any fun cases that you've seen that you think we should talk about, or any things that people tend to believe, things that can easily be put into meme forms sometimes as well, that are like, blah, 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 was sued this amount of money for this, and it's obviously just a complete fabrication, which I think is something we'll keep for the end of the show as a little fun way to go out. But this was making its rounds on Facebook and social media a while ago from different outlets, none particularly official. I don't think I saw any like Telegraph or any proper newspaper, and I've got up the one to sort of prove that it's rubbish, because this is like a satire page by lots of things, but it's been on multiple pages, and it is that a woman claims that she got pregnant during a 3D porn film at a cinema, and tried to sue the cinema for her getting pregnant because her husband was serving and came home and obviously could not be the legitimate father of her child because he'd been away for 6 months. Because he'd been away for 6 months, and she was something like 2 months pregnant when he got back. So, I mean, there are layers.
There are layers to this. It's almost one of those things that's difficult to comprehend the full stupidity of the proposition.
Yeah, and I think we're so ruined with stupidity that at first I didn't question it to be bullshit. That really says something about everything that literally you could hear that, and they're like, woman sues cinema because 3D porn film made her pregnant. Now, the first thing is she's suing them. Her husband's come back. I mean, he must believe her.
Well, I suppose she didn't necessarily need his permission to sue.
Oh yeah, but I would assume she's doing it to save face, because why would you do that? As in,
yeah.
Well, can we just clear up right now between both of us that neither of us believe that a 3D porn film can get you pregnant?
Well, I'm keeping an open mind, but I must confess I am leaning towards this being untrue. Just on the point of this being a segment that we are calling I Call Bullshit, are you intending to include a little musical number to segue nicely into this segment at the end of every podcast, just out of interest?
Now you've said it, I will.
Excellent.
And as I edit this, people will hear this musical number before hearing this part.
Excellent. Well, I'm delighted. I've been really impressed with the quality of the musical number, actually, having now heard it. I don't know how you managed to get a sitar and a flute to work so well together, but I'm delighted about how well
you've asked for it. Okay.
But anyway, back to this woman and her 3D film. This does actually remind me of an interesting question that somebody once asked me related to films. Imagine that a film comes out and it seems to be a perfectly normal, run-of-the-mill Hollywood action film, a kind of 3 out of 5 star thing.
Mm-hmm.
And people are watching it and it's getting sort of middling reviews. Then after a while, it seems to be the case that people are watching the film and they are crediting the film, members of the audience, with having them realize that they were gay, and they've since watched the film and come out as gay. And although there's no
this is a real film.
No, this is a thought.
Oh, okay, all right. So you said like it was either that or you were about to come out on the podcast. That's what I was waiting on.
What would we have done for episode 2? So imagine there's this film. People are watching the film. They're then describing that the film has made them sort of come out as gay and that they realise that they are gay. But the film doesn't appear to have any gay narrative. There's no sort of subtext of homosexuality or anything like that. Would you go and watch the film? That's my question to you.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get that kind of rubbish all the time. Like everyone was like, The Exorcist made people supposedly faint and women died in the audience of heart attacks because it was so terrifying and it's the most terrifying thing ever. And then you go and it's really not that bad. I mean, I would go. I mean, if it made me gay, then I'd be gay then at the end of it, wouldn't I? So I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care afterwards. Like it wouldn't bother me.
No, fair enough.
I think I'd do it just for like banter. Then, if I heard it's making everyone gay, I'd be like, I wonder. It would be like it might even become a thing. I think some of those things is like those things happen where maybe a few people came out as gay. It was a slow slow news day. They've turned this movie into this mythological thing because there's loads of those like behind the scenes myths of movies where, you know, there was a curse on the film because 3 of the actors died, or like, you know, all those kind of cursed movie rubbish. And it would just be like a slow news day. 2 guys who happened to have seen the same film probably came out as gay. And they're like, this movie's turning people gay. And then there's a bunch of people who are like severely in the closet who are like, I'm going to see this movie. And it's going to help me come out at the end. And they're just going to use the myth of the movie to come out as gay. It'll just become like a thing.
Yeah, that'd be the sort of power of advertising, I suppose. Yeah.
But I would see it. I mean, I probably wouldn't see this 3D porn film if it would make me pregnant, though.
No, that's a good point. I would be reluctant to become pregnant. But I mean, I struggle a bit with this. Not just obviously because this woman is clearly lying, but a 3D porn film in a cinema, is this?
Yeah, so that's what it was. It was a cinema. I've seen 2 different versions of it. See, this is where you get this this is where the bullshit comes in. Like one person says, I just watched a 3D porn film and it got me pregnant. And then another one says, woman sues cinema because she watched a 3D porn film and it made her pregnant. Now, I assume the cinema is not a brand cinema. Like she hasn't wandered into the Odeon. IMAX.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
But obviously this porn cinema is upscale enough that it has 3D technology on its screens.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because that's quite a big investment. And I can't imagine that the pornographic market for people who want to watch it in a cinema, presumably with other people around, is anything like as large enough to justify investment in 3D screening.
I mean, it was like in the 80s when you had like the little porn cinemas around like Trafalgar Square and that.
Did you? I don't know enough about that. What was that?
Well, let me tell you, Michael. No, it's just a well-known thing. I mean, I was too young to have gone, and I don't think I would have. I can't imagine it would be fun sitting in that room knowing that a bunch of shady people around you are feeling themselves up. But have you ever seen American Werewolf in London?
Yes.
Okay, so at the end, the werewolf sort of causes a load. It's Piccadilly Circus, not Trafalgar Square, but he causes a load of issue in Piccadilly Circus and runs out, and everything crashes. And that's because he's in a little porn theater cinema that's just there, and he goes in there to speak to his friend who's dead that he sees, because it's like a hidden away place that obviously not only odd people go to it. I mean, I don't know whether they just did it at that time of night, but I would assume that if you're going to create a porn theater, it's got to be its sort of number one source of income, because you're not going to want to sit in the same seats as the guys the night before to watch Avengers Age of Ultron after after Debbie Does Dallas double feature was on the night before.
Yeah, no, that is true. I think you'd have to be a dedicated pornographic cinema, wouldn't you, really? Yeah. Which again just strikes me as somewhere where the margins would just be far too low to justify investment.
I know. And so also on top of that, she would just have to, if she got pregnant in a 3D porn film, we would have to assume that, like, she just turned around and she was like, oh, it's all right. I wasn't with another man. I just went to watch some 3D porn at a cinema. Like, that's a normal thing to come back and your wife to say. But then again, I don't know their relationship. Maybe they used to go together and she missed him.
Maybe. Perhaps it was actually quite a touching, if you'll pardon the phrase, moment where she would usually go with her partner, and then she sort of kept up the tradition by herself. So this could actually be quite a heartwarming tale.
So I think to end this segment and our first podcast, then I would say, put to you in the bullshit meter, if this was the UK and this woman came to you, or from your knowledge came to any of your peers, claiming that a 3D porn film had got her pregnant, how do you think that would be met? And if you were forced to defend it, or How would you believe you would go about that to try and get the best outcome for your client?
I think it would be met with one, possibly two raised eyebrows. I have to be honest. I would be skeptical. I mean, I think what I would say to this lady if she came to me wanting to sue and she wanted my advice about it, I think possibly I would say, well, look, you're not going to be able to prove causation here. You're not going to be able to prove that watching the film made you pregnant. But I'm also interested, and I don't know the answer to this, but I don't know what or whether being made pregnant is even something you could, in theory, sue for. Because one of the fundamental principles of suing a cinema or any kind of entity is that you have to have been suffered harm. You have to be damaged in some way.
Would she count as a consenting participant to then be made pregnant by?
Well, this is another interesting question, isn't it? Because I think I'd have to ask her what the process was by which she became pregnant. Because it strikes me it would be very hard for her to have.
I assume it was, yes.
Well, but it'd be very hard for her to have consented to that without something slightly odd happening in the cinema. And if her case, I think, if she came to me and she said, "Look, I just went to the cinema and then I came out pregnant," I think there would be an interesting question about consent, because it's not entirely clear what's happened to her. But of course, on something of a tangent, there are cases of people who have consented to being caused harm, and that consent has effectively been found by the courts to have been invalid consent, because you cannot consent to certain types of harm being done to you. So strangely, the question of consent may actually be less significant to her having a successful case than the question of causation and how all this came about. But I think fundamentally my advice to her would be, look, you're about to have a child, all being well, and therefore you really don't want to be spending quite a lot of money bringing a claim against a cinema who are going to not only successfully defend it so you won't recover any money, but will also inevitably get their costs, because this is a ludicrous piece of litigation. So keep the money that you would otherwise have to spend to the cinema's legal costs and spend it on this strange, immaculate
miracle baby.
Exactly.
I assume that what we're looking at here is more of your urban myth style thing. You'll sit on the toilet seat that a man has left semen on, and now you're pregnant, or she sat in a seat. I mean, why she's not got like trousers or underwear on, that maybe someone else had watched this film previously before and has somehow got herself pregnant with a stranger's baby. But
Yeah.
I assume it's bullshit. It's bullshit, like when you're little and someone would say to you, if you're on the swing and you manage to swing it over the top bar, you'd go into another dimension, which was a well-known myth as a child.
Well, I wonder if it was a myth, because I had people that I knew as children, and now we don't really speak as much anymore. And I wonder if what happened was that they were on the swings one day and they just went into another dimension.
Yes, and the ones that come back, the ones that they just sort of like got that like look, like they've seen things on the other side of the swing.
Exactly, and stare out, thinking about the nature of existence, which strikes me as an interesting place to perhaps end our discussion about the woman who became pregnant watching a 3D film.
Because surely that does make you question the nature of existence.
We're going to have to create now a scale for this segment, how much we think this is bullshit. And
this one is 100% bullshit. I had to look it up based on the amount of people that were sharing it like it was fact, and took it back to its source. And it's pretty sure it's from a few places that seem like legitimate satire things, and they've obviously picked it up and ran with it on a few lesser known news outlets. So I just, first of all, the thing to know is that there's no name to this claimant. There's no
an important point, yeah.
there's no outcome to it. Pardon the pun. And it's just like, the more I looked into it, I was just like, but I knew I'd heard of it, and I had an idea for this first podcast. So I thought, even when I realized it was rubbish, let's just get these terrible things that people have, that people make up and put out there, like, oh, it's terrible, blah blah blah, lost all their money and was sued, and it's just absolute fabrication. So yeah, I think we should see where we can rate it. If I see one that seems so outlandish like this, it turns out to be true at the start of each segment, I will get you to let me know, once I give you the general overview before we discuss it, which way you're leaning towards.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I think, yeah, for this one, I think we can easily give it 5 Volmol Stoles out of 5.
A Volmol Stole.
Commenter.
We've already got a catchphrase. Right. Okay, so I will leave that there now. Otherwise, we'll just end up dribbling off into Volmol Stoles and talking about swimming and Catholicism. I hope
we wouldn't want that.
We wouldn't want that, no. And I hope you enjoyed our first podcast, and we will be back very soon. So thank you for tuning in to Holding Court with Dean and Mike, and we hope you tune in again in future.
Goodbye, everybody.
If you know of any strange court or legal cases you would like us to discuss on the show, feel free to email us at holding.court@outlook.com.